Good afternoon, Scott Dahl.
Good afternoon, Enzo. Good afternoon, everyone.
I want to see you every day, man. How can we do that?
Well, you've got my phone number. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen in a moment, and feel free to
Right, Scott. I leave the word to you. You can introduce your guest and start the conversation. I will be on the backstage. If you need me, just ping me, and I will be there.
You
I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you, Enzo. Well, I tell you what, very excited about today's panel. We have, first of all, kind of an all-star panel. We'll talk about that in a second. But looking forward to introducing everyone and looking forward to talking about benchmarking. I think it's a really, really cool topic. And we're looking forward to dealing with your questions. So please use the comments and give us some questions to deal with as well. But let me introduce the panelists, first of all. So Enzo, if you could bring them up for me. There we go. So I'm just going to go around in the order that they appear for me. The first panelist is Jens Egelman, and Jens is with Pandox. And Jens, do me a favor and tell us a little bit about what you guys do, because I think there's probably a lot of people that don't know.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, happy to be here. Looking forward to the chat today. So Pandox is a hotel owner in Europe, owning about 170 properties, which are spread out across continental Europe, the UK, and a little bit in North America. I'm supporting the operations part of the portfolio with distribution and revenue management, which is based out of Brussels.
Fantastic. So look forward to getting your perspective really from the operator's perspective. And it's cool that you're in a lot of markets, because I think that'll be a really interesting thing to talk about, how it's not happening the same everywhere, right? Which is a really interesting piece. So to me personally, no discussion about benchmarking would be complete without talking about STR. For those of you, I'm the old one on the panel. I love this one. It's always me. I got the first STR report. I remembered it was a single page static document. It's turned into something a whole heck of a lot more. And Vail, you have a big role there as well. So tell us a little about what you do. And if someone's been living under a rock in the hotel business, tell them a little bit about what STR is as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today, and welcome. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee at our corporate headquarters for STR. So I oversee the global sales and marketing for STR, and that entails all of our strategy and growth and development in those areas. For those of you who may not be familiar with STR, we have been around for over 35 years. We operate in over 180 countries, and we track more than 9 million hotel rooms in our database on a daily basis. And we are the global leader in hotel benchmarking, market insights, and consulting. And I'm glad to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Vail. For those of us who are a little bit geeky with data, boy, it's kind of cool to have you here and have you be represented here. So, and now let's talk a little bit about this. What makes it a little bit of an all-star panel for me. Our next two guests are no stranger to anybody that's watching the series, but as Enzo mentioned, we're going to turn the tables on them a little bit. So I'm going to be, again, the old guy in the panel and go ladies first. But Federica Salvatore, tell us a little bit about what you do, and tell us a little bit about yourself as a panelist today, not a hostess.
Yeah, hi everybody. So first of all, really, really exciting to be on this other part of the stage. You know, I'm always in the back, and we have been organizing this event since months. So it's really an honor to participate to this panel. And I've been working in the hospitality for over 14 years, and I'm focused on revenue management. I worked for many independent hotels and chained hotels managed by Hilton or Highgate. And now I am helping the companies and hotels with consultancy services for revenue strategy and commercial strategy. And I'm also lecturing. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
So, and I'm excited about you being on this panel when we figured out who was going to be with us, because you have that perspective of multiple operators and owners' perspective at the same time, because not only is every market acting differently, I think everybody feels what's happening a little bit differently and responds to it differently too. So it'll be cool to talk about that. And certainly last but not least, a friend to the show, a friend to my program at La Roche. She's been a guest speaker in my classes before. Christoph Hutter, tell us about yourself. And man, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us what a non-traditional revenue manager is.
Yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited once again to be here, and like Federica, this time on the other side. Yeah, non-traditional revenue manager. That term was coined by one of my old GMs who described me that way in an interview that he gave once. And he said, "Yeah, I'm working with a non-traditional revenue manager," and the term resonated with me because I try to do things a little bit differently. So if everybody is doing one thing, I try to do something else, and that helps standing out. And standing out is something that's hugely important, especially in this day and age where we're going to struggle fighting for market share. And that's why benchmarking is such an important topic, because it will help us to understand, did we do a good job in gaining that market share?
Thanks, Christoph. Yeah, I think every time you and I talk, I always end up thinking a lot after I get off the call. And so I'm looking forward to bringing that perspective to the discussion we have today. For those that don't know, there's a sister or a brother component of this program, which is the Hospitality Net panel on revenue optimization. And we base our programs, we time the panel opinions with the program, and then what we do is we kind of pick some of the best stuff and we talk about it during this hour. So Enzo, if you wouldn't mind, show us that first opinion and let's get on the topic. So the first opinion was one that Vail Ross picked out, and coincidentally has quite a bit of a reference to STR's data from Alexei Kapichin. And so Vail, tell us what you saw in there. Let's start the conversation on this one.
Yes, wonderful. Yes, this one stood out to me. There was some amazing, it was hard to kind of pull just one because there were some really amazing comments and point of views, and I appreciate everyone's engagement. I think a couple of reasons why this stood out to me. First off, on the creation of several competitive sets. And if we take a step back and look at really what the philosophy of benchmarking reporting is that it's simply defined as allowing a hotel or a group of hotels performance to be able to have some perspective into that, what is happening. And by using a competitive set, it allows us to judge and have more clarity in how our hotels or group of hotels are performing. And why not only has it been important and how we have always advised our customers on looking broader than just one competitive set, is because, and now more than ever in COVID, there's so many different dynamics and so many different drivers that can come to a specific hotel or group of hotels or brand. Historically, for example, a full service hotel in a central business district, we'll just look at hotels that are similar to them based on whether it be brand type or whether it be square footage type, and that is definitely important. However, in this day and age, it is also about what are some hotels within a broader competitive set, whether it be within a different destination. We are seeing lots of different demand drivers that are coming to the area, and really what's getting us out of this downturn has been the transient side of business, not necessarily the group side. So if you are a large group house, and for instance, you're just looking at a single competitive set of similar group hotels, that's just giving you one perspective. Being able to broaden that perspective and to see what other properties are doing, whether it be select service or hotels that are similar from an experience standpoint, is really key. And that's something we have always advised our customers to do, as well as definitely in this day and age, do it even more. That second point that we don't talk about as much, but our customers utilize quite a bit and now more than ever, is our concept that we introduced pre-COVID is a composite comp set. And really what this did is it increased the reliability of a comp set in areas where we may have non-compliance. Earlier on, we see a lot of consolidation, and that broke a lot of comp sets. This allows the ability for those comp sets to not be broken. It also allows our hoteliers to benchmark and to have a competitive set in more challenging markets. This became incredibly relevant during COVID when we saw a huge amount of hotels temporarily close. Being able to have an additional comp set that is using a composite comp set or composite hotel in there allowed hotels to really continue to have clarity when markets were either closed or there were different dynamics that were happening. There's more definition on our website around composite comp sets if it's something that's not familiar to you. And I think thirdly, about indexing, obviously looking at percent change, which historically that's what we've always done in an industry, either percent change year to date, running 12-month moving average, or week over week, day over day. Those numbers are going to be incredibly skewed now due to what happened in 2020. So a lot of what we're looking to today is not talking so much about percent change, but talking about how performance is indexing to 2019, as well as in some cases to 2009 after the last downturn. And we are encouraging our customers to do that and to go back into those competitive sets and look at what was the performance in 2019 and even further into 2009 to get an understanding of true recovery from a competitive set standpoint and a performance standpoint. So I think those three items just really stood out to me, and I felt was a good way to start the conversation and points of view that from an STR standpoint, we definitely encouraged pre-COVID, and we are absolutely encouraging in this time of post-COVID and moving into recovery.
Beautiful. Just a quick commercial for STR, completely unsolicited. For those hotels that don't get it, it's $1 million data, but it doesn't cost you $1 million. It's not very expensive. You just have to participate and feed the machine and basically pay the processing fees. And then they charge other parts of the business a decent amount of money to make money so that hotels can provide the data. So just look into it. If you haven't thought about it for a while, if you feel like your information is somehow compromised, I promise you it's not. I've known people there for 25 years and no one has ever divulged things to me, no matter how many times I've tried asking different ways and everything. So don't be afraid of participating, and you can learn so much from it. And so I just want to shift right over, if we can, to you, Jens, and I would love for you to tell us, like, this obviously you guys use this stuff and it's key, but how has your conversation changed in the last 12 months? I'm sure it's probably changed a tremendous amount.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I can say is that we're obviously having to, how can I say, when we look at benchmarking and comparison, we have had to widen our perspective a lot. So obviously we're looking at the comp set that you would have in kind of normal demand times doesn't apply anymore. Like one of the things I would say is that regarding, because I've seen a lot of comments regarding multiple comp sets and having different, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think our approach have been more to kind of look at whether that's let's say one wider group as opposed to several different entities. So having, for instance, whether you look at sub-market or market level, or you have potentially like a skimmed down version of the sub-market with sort of some criteria sort of to filter out to come to your set. Because in reality, what we see in hotels is that if you have two sets, I mean, everybody that's had a Rev Max or revenue management meeting knows it's hard even to get across the market share figures and strategies just for one set. And when you start adding several sets, there's this risk for confusion, which we have seen, at least historically. So we try to kind of stay away a little bit from that. There's obviously also the risk of if you have a very sort of, if you have strong focus and commercial strategies towards, let's say, the corporate segment, and which you're focusing on, and then you have, let's say, your distribution, even your online comp set, that might also lead to you kind of siloing your organization a little bit and pulling in different directions. So I would say wider, we're looking definitely including things like accommodation, alternative accommodation, and looking just broader in the market when looking at benchmark.
Cool, thanks. Federica, I just want to kick it right to you now. I want to ask you sort of the same question, but you have a different perspective. So how is it, we used to use the star, right? And so many of us, 50% or more bonuses were tied to them at one point or another. That would be a real scary proposition right now. How does it affect your perspective?
Well, I would say that STR is, of course, a tool which is necessary because we need, in any case, to look at historical data and to understand, in order to understand how we performed in comparison with a point of reference in the market, how much was our market share, and also the missed opportunities. So of course, it is great to use it, and I have to say that I have been always used different concepts in STR, for example. So I've been used to work in the luxury segment, and I always had like a realistic concept, an aspirational one, and then I always looked at the sub-concept, the upper upscale and luxury, to understand, to have a point of reference. And I think this is something that if we didn't do it before, we should start to do it, because compare with a static concept is in a way limited, of course. And most of all now in this time when the demand has changed so much, we have different patterns. We have seen that there is a different booking window. Some segments are also not anymore working. You know, we have to wait for some segments to recover. Everything has been changed, and so I think that we should look wider and broader to the data. And if we manage to have more concept, that would be great, of course, because we can have more points of reference. So what I'm doing is, of course, to look at this data, and also to try, what I think it is really, really important, is also to have the chance to compare the performance of our hotel also by segment. And I think we all know that, for example, in STR, there is the macro segmentation between transient and groups. And it's also a pity that in some countries, for example, in my country, in Italy, hotels do not participate so much in this macro segmentation, because this also would help to have an idea of the performance, because they have different trends, different patterns, different demand, different targets. And maybe you have performed very well in the transient segment, but you did not perform very well in the group segment. And if you go granular in this way, you can understand what you missed and maybe think about what to do differently. So the ideal would be also to go always deeper and deeper in the segmentation, because also some segments like corporate or the consortia, you know, they have different patterns, the consumers have different habits, different behavior. And if you manage to compare all these performance in the past, but also in the future, that would be great. So another thing I would like to add is that STR made something great last year, because they also started the program to look forward, the forward STR. And this is something that also the other tools did. So in this way, you are not looking only at your past performance, but you have an idea of what the market, how the market is going, what your competitors are doing, how they are performing, and you can act in advance. So you're not just seeing and looking at the past, what we have done, what we could have done, but you also have an idea of what the other are doing in the future and what you are missing already, and maybe you can adjust your strategy accordingly. So this is also another great tool that I think we need to use.
Definitely. Thank you. So, Christoph, I'm going to actually just kind of ask you. Frederica mentioned something which was reference points. And it really brings up really a hot topic that's out there right now. And you see a lot of things in terms of training. And I've incorporated in some of my classes. And that's data-driven storytelling, right? And so how does a person put together the proper explanation for something that's happening and start to understand it based on those data points? So I'm sure you have an opinion on the whole thing in terms of a little bit of a non-traditional approach, and I was hoping you'd share it with us, and then after this we'll kind of move on to the next topic.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because in the past the stereotypical revenue manager was the number crunching nerd sitting in their office all by themselves and never talking to anyone. And that has, of course, changed. Today, revenue managers need to be able to convey the information that they crunched and explain it. And storytelling, of course, is a really good way to do that. and especially when it comes to these changes that we have seen, where we have, of course, the one side of the industry where we always have done things the way we have done them, and then the pandemic hit, and now nothing is anymore the way it was. Nothing is going to be the way it was, at least not for a long while. So we absolutely need to break up these old ways and rethink the game a little bit. And Federica mentioned already something really important there, and that's historically we have looked at historical data. And of course, that is still important, although maybe in the short term right now, it's a little bit less important than it used to be in the past. It still is important to have a good understanding of historical trends and see what happened there, including market segment information, benchmarking on market segment level. That's like a gold mine. I remember consulting for a property where basically I didn't have much other than STR report and some basic occupancy and rate reports for that property, and I could very easily and quickly identify a multi-million-dollar potential in improvements there, and that will still remain very valid. But on the other hand, just like Federica said, we need to shift away a little bit from the exclusivity of looking backward and need to look forward. We need to look into the future, and products like the STR forward-looking product, that is essential. That is such a fantastic tool, and really, it's that proverbial crystal ball that revenue managers were supposed to have in order to forecast. Well, now we have a tool that allows us to actually do that, to see what is happening in the market, and where can we act, where can we modify our strategy on the revenue side, where do we need to take action on the marketing side, so that we can optimize the performance of the hotel.
Thank you. So speaking of forward looking, let's look forward to the next question. So Enzo, throw us the next slide. Oh, no. This is an opinion by someone by the name of Scott, and Federica chose that one. And so, Federica, first of all, my mom will keep sending the checks. Don't worry. And second of all, thank you very much. And I'd love to hear what you found that was interesting in this one.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for sharing this, because I think there are very good inputs from that. So first of all, as you mentioned, COVID has killed several of our favorite KPIs. So we have been talking about the comparison year over year that is not so much relevant anymore. And I do agree with what Bill said, that it could be good to have a look at historical data and the performance year over year to track our recovery pace. So to understand how closer we are to the recovery. Of course, if we compare with the 2019, let's think about that in many countries, 2019 was the best year of the last decade. So it was a real well-performing year. And of course, last year was not a year of performing. There was no demand. So there is a huge gap. And we also know that the recovery will be slow, but it's good to track it. So the purpose of this kind of analysis is to understand how close we are to the recovery. On the other hand, if we want to understand for the strategy, how we performed, I think that what we already said, the short-term analysis of the historical data are very good. So we can compare week over week, or month over month, and here we can also see the performance and understand how to adjust the strategy, or how to improve and take other opportunities. So this is the first point. Another point that I also mentioned is this comparison between the historical and the forward-looking. I think it is really important because when we talk about benchmarking and concept, we should understand, first of all, why we do need a concept. Because somebody could say, you know, everything has been changed and to have a concept is useless. It is not. It's always useful to have concepts, but we need to understand which one and for which purpose. So when we look at the history, also with the tools, of course, that help us, without them we couldn't do it, we track our performance, the market share, and so on. When we look at the forward, when we look ahead forward, there we can have an insight and a better understanding of our market. We can be aware and conscious of our competitors are doing, of opportunities, and so on. And this means, according to me, also to be able to check different kinds of concepts. So when we compare, we need to have, we are forced in a way to have a more statical concept. And this was used also for financial purpose, you know. But I think that most of all in the forward looking, we can be really more flexible. So yes, we have, I think, a new concept of concept as the title of the episode, because we have to, we can, in the forward looking, be flexible, dynamic. We can look at different kind of concepts, and really my invitation is always to try to have multiple sets of concepts according to the segments, and to use all the tools that you can use in order to track, to understand their performance. Because of course, what are we looking now? If we think historical data, we said that are less relevant. What is really relevant now? For sure, the internal data. So how we are performing, on the book, our pace, our pickup, but also the market. So we need to be aware of our concept, of the trend, of the customers, of the segments, and if we look ahead, if we use tools like STR or other BI and let's say demand tools that can track also the performance of our concept in the future, that would be great. Another tool that we can use are the rate shopper, of course. So it is important to understand how our competitors are positioning themselves, because we have a position in the market, and we know that with the change of demand, many hotels, some hotels closed, others changed their positioning, their price positioning, others just dismissed some services, others made new services. So first of all, we should think again at who is our concept, and maybe create more in order, according to our target. This would help us. The most we are granular, and the better we can perform, and the better we can have a winning strategy. I think this is really a key point.
Perfect. I want to revisit the difference between the two concepts, but Enzo, would you put up Steve's question again? Because I think it's a fantastic question, and I wanted to ask the panel, and I'm actually going to start with Vail, because it was the 2019 comparison that the first, very, very early on in the whole process, that Steve Hood exposed me to, another very prominent person at STR. So Vail, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on this question? It's a very interesting question. I'm actually completely married to the 2019 benchmark, but there's a great question about why have we gotten so married to it, and what about possibly using a blended one or something?
Yeah, and I think that this is a fabulous question, and there's no, it doesn't need to be either or. I think it's definitely a practice that needs to be both. I think the industry as a whole wanted to get back to that golden era of 2019, and that was the benchmark that everyone was trying to get back to. Was that the right benchmark? Is it the right benchmark? There are some markets in the United States that have already exceeded performance numbers from 2019, so they're not even looking at percent change or even wondering if what 2019 did, because they now have a new high benchmark. The concept of blending 2015 into 2019 is definitely a good one. I think in some scenarios, and I mentioned a little bit earlier in my commentary, some benchmarking is being done back to 2009, because remember the last big downturn we had, which we thought it could never get any worse than what we experienced at the end of 2008 and into 2009. We can all see that was not the case of what happened in 2020. There are some folks that are benchmarking to that to understand from what the lowest was in historical times to where we were today. I don't know that there's a right or wrong. I think in understanding what is the perspective you're trying to gain from that information, whether it be understanding your transient benchmark or your group benchmark to those time periods, I think that is something that is a conversation that from an individual property, the revenue management and team have to have that conversation of what the strategy is. Candidly, I think 2019 is just where people wanted to get back to, because it was the strongest year that the industry had ever seen from a standpoint of demand and overall performing KPIs. So I don't know that I answered that. I think I just agree with Steve that it really depends on what the strategy is. And I think also, to Frederica's point, we do need to understand what happened yesterday. I think now more in times, people are, yes, we love the monthly information, and the monthly information is important, but it's more important of what happened last night, what happened last week, because everything is changing so quickly. What happened in my market, looking broader than just my comp set, what's going on in my sub-market class or my market class, depending on where you are, that happened last week. I mean, the performance of what we're seeing is changing weekly, and the story is becoming different every week. So I think from a 2019 standpoint, one, the industry wants to get back there. Two, I think from an investment standpoint, when people are talking about investment in our industry, are we getting back to that healthy point, is also why that's driving that 2019 number.
Yeah, I think for me, I like the 2019 comparison because it's that high watermark that you mentioned. And I think we've had an event that sort of interrupted what was otherwise a very good thing. And so it's really been, I've found very useful in the hotels that I work with and the hotels that my students work with. It's been super useful as a forecasting tool. And mainly the reason is because it creates this benchmark that we now know what we've lost from. And then we can take a look at the different market segments that's already come up in our conversation, the different market segments that make up the mix in our marketplace, in our hotel, and sort of look at, hotels that are largely dependent upon domestic leisure business have gotten in many cases quite a bit back to 2019's numbers, and they're tracking along there. And honestly, if they have 10% mix that's international business or 10% of their mix that's group business, we know that's going to take longer. And so you kind of have the ability to kind of model out a forecast based on the consistency of 2019. But I would also tell you, Steve, when I think about it, as far as an index benchmark, I like the idea of taking the multiple year approach, because if I had a killer 2019, I'm not going to be happy for a long time if I'm using that as a very difficult, especially it's a market share benchmark. Whereas if I take a look at the last 5 years, I think probably a pretty fair comparison. So I was going to ask you, Jens, the same question, because I think you have a pretty interesting perspective. How are you judging success when you look at it? Is 2019 a big thing for you, and kind of getting back to that, as Val mentioned, that sort of pre-COVID high watermark? I mean, Val, we watched that in Switzerland, the pre-2007, 2008 credit crisis decline. Switzerland, because it's so dependent on international finance, has never gotten back to the high watermark before that RevPAR was. So then we had another one compounding it. So it's very different in markets. The US, after that same one, took only 44 months to get back. So very interesting, the stuff that takes place. But let me ask you, Jens, like in your environment, I mean, we love the gamified part of the job. Like I used to love getting my star reports every week. Did I win? Did I lose? Now, how do I even keep score? Like, how do we know? You might be muted.
Sorry. So I was saying that, well, I like the idea of the rolling average of potentially 4 or 5 years to measure. I think that, of course, it's the kind of the last thing that you remember. So I think 2019 has been a comparison point. But what I see now is that a lot of properties are also monitoring year on year in terms of kind of monitoring the recovery. So they want to see, okay, what was the pickup pace compared to, for instance, last summer. So that's, of course, happening now. But then I think also like one thing that's been really important during this time has been to look at let's say also forward looking in terms of searches that are happening, intent for bookings that's happening. That's kind of been one of the pieces of data that we've been looking at, because we want to kind of understand that, okay, what's the intent of travelers to come back? They might not be booking yet, but that's a way for us to kind of understand what's going to come. And when the bookings aren't there, there's obviously not that much you can do. But it's given at least indications, and you have some OTAs provide some of the data that you get. Some tech providers also have forward-looking data in terms of search behavior, even on a segmentation level. So there are ways.
Excellent. So I tell you what, Christoph, I'm going to ask you just to kind of reflect on the whole idea of the forward-looking comp set, because we're kind of in that point. And then Federica, I'll ask you to sort of take the final word on this opinion. But we used to, a long time ago, for those that don't remember, 5 to 7 hotels, this basic measurement. And we would sometimes sit in the lobby and we would ask our customers, okay, if you couldn't stay here last night, where would you have stayed? And they say 5 or 6 hotels because they're looking, and it was a different environment. But now people buy online, and just search for your hotel sometime and see if you can figure out which 5 or 6 hotels are your primary competitors. It's more likely 50, right? So Christoph, how do you sort that out? Like, what's the way to look for it? How do you figure out who should be in that broader comp set?
Yeah, that's a really, really tough question to answer, because there is not just one answer. It will, in the end of the day, depend on every single property and the strategy there. But what my thoughts are, rightly you said, in the past we had one comp set, maybe 2, when it comes to the STR report. But what we need to keep in mind is that already in the past we actually had more than that. We just were maybe not looking, because we competed for a certain kind of business with certain kind of properties. Maybe we competed for our meeting and events business with some of the hotels in the market, but not at all for the bar business. So it really depends. And I think that the pandemic and all the changes now have brought it a little bit into consciousness, so that we're aware that, hey, actually we have a lot of different comp sets. We have our bar comp sets, where we're competing maybe on OTAs, and maybe even on one and the same maybe across different OTAs, we maybe even have different comp sets. And the whole thing becomes increasingly complex, of course, as it always does, and becomes very dynamic. So the competitors of one day may be different from the competitors of the next day. So that's where things start to be tricky when we want to do benchmarking, and when we want to do our daily strategy. We need to have the tools in place, BI tools in place, and market intelligence tools in place that provide us with that information. Who am I actually competing with? Just like we need revenue management systems in place to develop our strategy, and come up with pricing, and we need business intelligence tools to understand our segmentation and all these different numbers. We need tools in place that allow us to more dynamically understand what is out there. And I'm not even speaking of multi-market comp sets where I may be competing with a hotel that's not even in the same city. So these are big questions that we will need to find answers to as an industry over the next few years. But very, very interesting topic for sure.
5 years ago, I thought I was so smart because I had a neighborhood comp set and one that matched my meeting space. Woo-hoo, I was so smart at the time. But anyway, we've come so far. So Federica, just kind of wrap. I'll tell you what. That's a great idea. Let's. I'm going to ask you, Federico, come back to you. But Jens, it was Sylvia's viewpoint that got your attention, right? We're rethinking competition. So let's move directly into that conversation, and then let's talk about new KPIs potentially that are coming around that we're starting to deal with.
Yes, so this stood out to me. Some of you have maybe seen some presentation or workshops that I've done. So I'm really passionate about net RevPAR and distribution costs. So when I saw that triggered my interest. But I think in general, there's obviously a lot of I think not only during COVID, but I think in general revenue leaves some questions to be asked. Whether is that the only thing that we should be looking at? So things like revenue or revenue per available guest, of course, is interesting, but also, let's say, GOP per available guest and things like that. So I think that now more than ever, margins are squeezed, budgets are really, really tight. And if we think sort of in the longer perspective, if we're looking at revenue and we're making commercial decisions on revenue solely, and you have, let's say, average hotels somewhere between 80% distribution cost, you might be then taking decisions which are not profitable for your hotel. And sort of from the owner perspective, you cannot really afford to do that. You need to make sure that your commercial strategies are actually profitable. And so you might be looking, let's say you're doing really well in terms of your STR revenue composite, but in reality, you're losing money. So I think that's an important aspect, and I think like there's obviously a way for us to go to get there. We have internally established, let's say, a process to benchmark our own hotels in terms of net RevPAR and distribution cost. But the next step is for the industry to go forward, to go there and to establish processes and standardized ways to measure distribution cost, and not to measure total revenue for sure. If we're talking about this kind of detail of how we want to measure ourselves, we have to take into account that 20-30% of revenue comes from other sources. So I think this is the direction we want to go, and I'm still waiting for the tech company to come and say, look, we got it. Start sending us the distribution cost, and we'll give you the benchmarking figures.
And I would love to, if I could just love to add to those comments. One of the things that has really been also taken into consideration to your point about not just looking at the rooms revenue, but looking at the P&L and benchmarking against P&Ls. That is something on a monthly basis that we have expanded our sample and is used by many of our customers, and what's happening with the overall profitability, what's happening with labor costs, what's happening with labor expenses in the sense of how it compares to the over bottom line of total revenue. So really expanding, it's not just about the rooms revenue, to your point. There's so many other components to understand the true profitability. And the more granular the industry can get and the more streamlined in how it can be reported, that has really been one of the biggest hurdles to get to some of those deeper true KPIs, is to get some consistency on reporting. Because if you don't have consistency, you can't have benchmarking. But absolutely, to that point, it is looking at the bigger operation of the hotel and being able to benchmark not only just in a competitive set, but from a P&L standpoint is a trend in which we're really seeing.
We use a simulation in one of my classes, in a revenue management class, and it's basically every hotel is identical. You benchmark against other hotels, but you determine your direct marketing, you determine your online travel agency margin, and a couple of other things. Very simple, but no difference in quality of the hotels. But everybody has a little bit different philosophy. It's amazing to watch some of the students that have listened to the direct business mantra that will spend 35 or 40% cost of sales on marketing instead of spending 15 or 20% on an OTA margin, because they're not looking at it as matter of factly. They're looking at it based on emotional sale and or spend and everything, and they're not able to see that number. And then I give them a little bit of a process that they can see it, and they go, whoa, I can't believe I was doing that. I think a lot of hoteliers have listened to that mantra over the last couple of years, and I absolutely don't want to spend more distribution costs than I have to, but if you're not aware of it, you can kind of fall into some emotional decisions, and pretty soon you're spending 30% of your revenue in a market segment getting direct business when you could have it for 20% on an online travel agency with no risk, right? Because you're only paying for the transactions you get. So yeah, it's super important. Christoph, I'm going to ask you, and we'll finish up on this one because I want to make sure we get to the next opinion for a second too. But I wanted to ask you again, this non-traditional thing. There's some other KPIs that people are talking about that, we've all kind of hopefully heard of net RevPAR at this point, but it goes a step further. Like what kind of some new innovation is coming about? I thought you might want to bring that up.
Yeah, I just want to quickly chime in and say, absolutely, we need to somewhat transition away from always looking at occupancy, average rate, and RevPAR, which are important, which are super important and very helpful in understanding what's going on. But we need to look beyond, and benchmarking against P&L is really a very, very powerful tool to improve business. We need to keep in mind GoPar has been around since, I think, 2003, yet when it comes to benchmarking in the industry, it's absolutely nowhere. So I would really love to see that be more front and center. But we also need to be a little bit more innovative and think, okay, when it comes to benchmarking, let's benchmark against our own property and look a little bit about how we are doing ourselves. One of the things that I came across is a KPI that was developed by our friend and co-producer here of the show, Diego Fernandez, who came up with the RevPAR index per room type. And I found this a really interesting concept that, you're benchmarking on room type level and can really uncover some opportunities. And I recently started to say, well, in the past, revenue management was oftentimes defined as the art of turning away business. Well, in times like this, when there's not a lot of business to turn away, we need to change the definition and say revenue management is the art of uncovering opportunities. And I think when we're benchmarking against room types, we will start to uncover a lot of opportunities on how we can improve that. So everybody who wants to find out more about the RTI, the RevPAR room type index, can do so. It's in the revenue management dictionary that we published a little while ago, that you can download on the HospitalityNet website. And there is a full article in the dictionary by Diego explaining all details on that KPI and how you can use it to improve your own performance.
Thank you, Christoph. So, by the way, P&L benchmarking sounds absolutely amazing. Vale, I'm not going to ask you for the level of participation in the host report on a monthly basis yet. I know you guys are pushing it hard, but Federica, I actually want to ask you, based on what we talked about, you can't even get hoteliers to share market segmentation. How long do you think until they open up and share the P&L data?
Wow, what a question. Well, I think it takes still a bit, because there is a resistance from hotelier to share their own data. There is always this fear in a way. What I think is that, of course, this is the future, because as we said, if we stay on the top line, we are not looking at the whole picture, because what it really matters at the end is the profit. So if we can compare, if we want to compare really the results, how we performed, we should compare the GoPar, the GOP. I think probably my 2 cents is that this will come first from the chains, and because there is always kind of resistance from independent hotels. So I see many realities. I can say, for example, Italy is a country where most of hotels are independent and small, and there is really resistance to open the data. But I think that chains and branded hotels will start with this trend, and gradually also the other will add.
I think you're right. I think they have an experience with it. They know the data is not vulnerable, and I think they give you a critical mass. So if you're an independent hotelier, you can subscribe and you can start getting a report, as opposed to waiting for enough people to subscribe to get the data to be right. So let's move on to, we've got just a couple minutes, and we don't want to leave this opinion out because it was a pretty strong one. But Christoph, I'm going to come to you, right? And it was kind of along that question that we started out with. How do you figure out who your customers are to really understand how to put that comp set together?
Yeah, I think that Digna, in her opinion and viewpoint, really highlighted the absolute hot questions here. Who are the customers? What do they want? What do they value? Because that's what you need to do when you're trying to define your comp set or your comp sets. Because we're talking about many different comp sets now. You need to really go and talk to them and find out in a statistically relevant way. What is it that the customer wants? How did they get to you? How did they find you? And then use that information in order to define your comp sets. Defining their needs and understanding their needs in order to to build your product. We need to redevelop our product from room types to rate plans, all the rates and offer architecture that's up in the air, and we really need to have a very dynamic approach here to move forward into the future.
So, Christoph, tell you what, we got about a couple minutes left. So I'm going to start with you. One final word of wisdom. Leave everybody with something amazing.
Be different. Different is better than better. So you always need to make sure that you stand out from the crowd, and doing things differently than everybody else in the market is a sure way to success if done right, of course.
Beautiful. How about you, Vale? Send us off.
Yeah, no, I think, when we talk about comp sets, it really is the foundation of all benchmarking reports. And whether we're looking at historical data, whether we're looking at forward-looking data, whether we're looking at P&L data, and how we approach that comp set, I think, Christoph put it right. We need to think differently about it, and we need to think about what our strategy is. And that's something that has been done as an industry, but is more important now more than ever, because it really is that foundation of benchmarking as a whole.
Fantastic. Jens, same question.
Yeah, I would maybe wrap up by saying I think comp sets, we need to take as much of a scientific approach as we can to choosing the comp set. Historically, it's been a subjective kind of decision. Someone says this, and that. But I think there's a lot of data sources out there that we can use, whether it's your review data, reading the customer reviews, OTAs provide information. You can do some simple keyword research on Google. So there are ways for you to find out, okay, what are my customers actually searching for and who are they comparing it with? So I would say, don't trust the gut feeling.
All right, Federica, final word.
Right. So let's say use most tools that you can use. So be scientific and exploit every tool that is that you can find. There are also some free tools that you can use. Try to be more granular as possible. So close to your financial concept, traditional concept, just put a referential concept. So a concept of reference, and go granular. I really, really invite everybody to make a comparison by market segment, because in this way you can be really more precise with the strategy.
And I tell you what, the only thing I would throw on top of it is, if you're a smart operator, you'll get more out of the data than you will lose by sharing the data. And so if you're not participating already, participate as much as you can, because the benchmarking will help you run your business. And quite frankly, it will help us all run our own business. I mean, it's illegal for us to decide about our prices. It's illegal for us to have discussions about market conditions, but it's not illegal for us to be smart and look at the data that's available and make good decisions, right? And guess what? If we're all looking at the same information, we don't need to have a meeting about prices. We can all draw the same conclusions. We can all do the right thing. So I would, my last piece of stuff is simply participate, right? If you're in a country that has 10 or 15 or 20% participation in SDR, for example, man, check it out. You can benefit from that. I understand that the subscription for the P&L participation is going up. Amazingly valuable information. Don't miss out on that information. So that would be the one thing I would throw in, Enzo.
Amazing, guys. So we talked about a lot of suggesting the right use of tools. Now we're going to go and show you 3 amazing products. The first one is going to be the Hotels Network, and we will introduce OneCo in a few seconds. So thank you, guys. Really hot conversation, a lot of interaction, still people asking questions on LinkedIn. So feel free, guys, if you have some time after the live, go through the comments if there is some particular question.
Absolutely.
I think there was something interesting for you, Vale. Maybe you can look at these comments in LinkedIn later and try to, reply to some question related to STR data.